He stood to cheer his son. Then 2 guards grabbed him and told him to leave immediately. The crowd was roaring, the scoreboard lit up, and the whole stadium was alive except for the section where one man stood proudly, hand on heart, watching his son take the field for the very first time. He wasn't just any dad, he was a decorated Marine, home from his 3rd deployment, wearing his service jacket and a quiet, worn-out smile. But not everyone saw pride. 2 security guards saw a threat. They didn't ask questions. They didn't check tickets. They just walked straight toward him, zeroed in like he didn't belong. One of them tapped his shoulder hard. "Sir, I'm gonna need you to come with us." No explanation, no warning, just tension thick as concrete. He looked confused, polite, even showed them his ticket. But that didn't matter. The 2nd guard leaned in close and said, "We've had complaints. You're making people uncomfortable." Around them, people started watching. Some stared. Some whispered. His son, on the field, caught his eye. But then, before anyone could step in, they put their hands on him, and everything changed. He didn't resist. That's the part that stuck with people, how calm he was. How quiet. He just looked at the guards, then back at his son and let them lead him away. But the silence that followed him wasn't just confusion. It was disbelief. A mother in the row behind him whispered, "He didn't do anything." Another parent pulled out their phone. But most people just watched. That's how it is sometimes. Racism doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers behind a badge and a uniform. They escorted him to the tunnel like he was some kind of threat, ignoring his repeated questions. "Why am I being removed? What complaint?" They gave him nothing, not even eye contact. Just muttered something about a possible disruption and kept moving. Meanwhile, his son, a high school freshman, was looking everywhere for his dad. He had invited him specially for this moment, his debut, his dream. But from the field, all he could see was an empty seat and a ripple of confusion. Then someone yelled something from the bleachers that no one expected, and everything started to shift. From the 3rd row, a teenage girl stood up and shouted, "Why are you taking him? He's a Marine." Heads turned. The security guards didn't flinch, but the pressure was rising. A few people started recording. A man near the aisle asked, "Is he being arrested?" Still no answers. That's when another voice cut through, deeper, commanding, and full of anger. The school's athletic director. He had just walked out of the press box and saw the scene unfolding. He rushed down the steps, yelling over the crowd, "What's going on here?" The guards stiffened, clearly not expecting anyone with authority to step in. One of them muttered, "He was causing a disturbance." But the athletic director wasn't buying it. "He's literally sitting in the seat we assigned him. He's this kid's father." Silence. For a second, it felt like the air itself froze. The director turned to the Marine. "Is this true?" The Marine nodded slowly, still calm, still respectful, but his eyes said everything. And that's when the director said the words that flipped the entire stadium on its head. The director turned to the crowd and said, loud enough for the whole section to hear, "This man is Sergeant Eric Lawson. He served 12 years, 3 tours overseas, and he's here tonight because his son, number 24, is starting his very first game." The crowd was dead silent. Then a ripple of shock passed through the stands. A few people clapped. One woman stood up. Then another. Within seconds, it turned into a standing ovation, but the security guards still didn't move. One of them said under his breath, "He didn't look like he belonged." That was it. That sentence, the quiet part said out loud, spread like wildfire. Someone caught it on video. The director heard it too. His eyes narrowed. "You're both done. Badge and radio. Now." The guards tried to argue, but it was too late. Phones were out. The crowd was filming. The power had shifted. And while everyone's attention was on the confrontation, number 24 was still frozen on the field, staring at the tunnel, waiting to see what would happen next. The stadium buzzed, but on the field, Eric's son was motionless, helmet off, eyes locked on the tunnel. Coaches were yelling. The game was resuming, but he didn't move. Then without a word, he jogged off the field. Straight past the sidelines. Straight into the tunnel. The ref blew the whistle. Confused. Fans turned. Murmurs spread. Was he hurt? Was he quitting? But what happened next shut everyone up. He found his father just past the gates, right where the guards had left him. And in front of everyone, the cameras, the phones, the stunned crowd, he wrapped both arms around him and said, "You don't miss my debut, not for anyone." The Marine, tough as steel just moments ago, broke. You could see it in his face. No words, just this trembling in his hands. But then a reporter, still recording, stepped forward and asked the boy why he walked off the field. His answer would end up on national news by morning, and it would burn through social media like wildfire. He looked straight into the camera and said, "If my dad can fight for this country, but can't sit and watch me play, then I don't want to play for this school. Not tonight." The moment hit like a gut punch. Online, people clipped it, looped it, shared it with captions like, "This is America." In the stadium, you could feel the mood shift from shock to shame. Even some of the players on the other team took a knee. The coach tried to convince him to come back, told him scouts were in the stands. But he didn't budge. Football's important, but he's more important. The crowd applauded again. Louder this time, not for the game, but for the stand. Meanwhile, the two security guards were being walked out of the stadium by police. That video, their exit, was also caught and posted. And one of them made the mistake of muttering, "It's just politics. People get too sensitive." That clip would end their careers. But the real twist wasn't what happened next to them, it was what happened the very next day at school. By morning, the story had gone viral. Local news ran it first. Then national outlets picked it up. Headlines called it everything from "Marine father removed from son's game without cause" to racial profiling at Friday Night Lights. The school's inbox exploded. Sponsors called. Alumni started pulling donations. But what really hit hardest was what happened in the school hallway the next morning. Eric's son walked in, not knowing what to expect. But the second he stepped through those doors, the entire football team was waiting for him in silence. Then, one by one, they handed him their jerseys. Every single player, even the seniors. And then the team captain stepped forward and said, "Until your dad gets an apology on that field, none of us are playing." Teachers watched from their classrooms. Phones were out again. The principal was already on the phone upstairs with the school board, the district, and the mayor. Because something bigger was happening. This wasn't just a protest anymore. This was a reckoning. And no one was ready for what the Marine did next. He didn't want attention. He didn't ask for it. But when reporters camped outside his home and networks begged for interviews, he finally agreed on one condition. The apology had to be public, and it had to happen on the same field where he was humiliated. The school board tried to push back, suggested a private meeting, even offered a settlement. He refused. "You embarrassed me in front of my son. You will acknowledge me in front of him too." That Sunday, they held a press conference on the 50-yard line. The stands were full again, but this time, nobody came for football. They came for accountability. The principal gave a stiff, pre-written apology. The superintendent followed with a half-hearted promise to review security procedures. But then Eric stepped to the mic, wearing the same service jacket he'd worn that night. And what he said wasn't just for the school, it was for every parent who had ever been treated like an outsider in a place their child called home. What he said made half the crowd cry, and it made the other half furious. He said, "I fought overseas so my son could grow up in a country better than the one I did. But what happened here? That wasn't better. That was the same old story, different uniform." The field was silent. You could hear people sniffle, others shake their heads. But then he looked up at the stands, at the crowd, the students, the parents, and said, "The only reason this story is being told is because people filmed it. People spoke up, so don't stop now. Because next time, it might not be me. It might be someone with no rank, no uniform, just skin." That line hit hard, it echoed. And right then, In the middle of that silence, his son walked out onto the field in full gear alone and stood beside him. No game, no ball, just father and son, center field, holding hands. That image ended up on the front page of 6 newspapers. But what the school didn't expect was who else saw it, because that night, a letter arrived. And it wasn't from the school board, it was from Washington. The letter came from the Pentagon. Official seal. No press, no fanfare. Inside was a handwritten note from a retired general who had served with Eric overseas. It read, "You've done more damage to injustice in one Friday night than most of us could in a lifetime of service. The country may not always see you, but we do." Along with it came a formal invitation to speak at the National Leadership Summit on Equity in Education, not just attend keynote. That moment lit a fire nationwide. Schools across the country began reviewing their security policies. Students used the story in debate tournaments, essays, even college applications. Eric didn't want fame. But suddenly, he had a platform, and he used it to talk about bias, belonging, and what it means when silence becomes louder than words. Meanwhile, the 2 guards? Fired. Investigated. One gave an interview, full of excuses. The other went quiet. And as for Eric's son, the scouts who saw him walk off the field that night, they called back. Said it was the most leadership they'd seen in years. Offered him a scholarship full ride. Not just for talent, but for courage. If that moment gave you chills, share it. More people need to know what quiet strength really looks like.